Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Welcome into another edition of the JMU Sports News Podcast. I am Bennett Conlin, and I am joined by Jack Fitzpatrick for what should be a very exciting year in review podcast.
BetOnline is your number one source for all of your basketball info, stats, news, and scores. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest player reports for this year's pro basketball playoffs. BetOnline is always your sports information destination. We have you covered for all of your sports wagering needs. Basketball, MLB, NHL, hockey, right down to UFC and boxing, even golf. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to get all of your betting info, including live betting options and your favorite casino and card games. You can play right from the comfort of your couch on your phone. So head to betonline.ag today. Use your mobile device too. Just head online to betonline.ag and get in on the action. Be sure to use our promo code BELIEVE when you sign up. That's promo code BLEAV to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. So you want to get started with a $100 first-time deposit. They'll hook you up with $50 free. Use promo code BELIEVE. BetOnline, that's where the game starts. I'm so excited for this one. I got ahead of myself. I wanted to do the 3 bold predictions, and you reminded me we have yet to do a year in review. And here we are sitting on June 8th. All JMU sports are over. If I'm not mistaken, only college baseball is remaining in terms of collegiate sports still in action. So it's proper time to look back at what a year 2022-2023 was.
Yeah, it'll be exciting. First year in the Sun Belt. A lot to unpack.
And American and independent.
That's true. Multiple conferences for the Dukes. They're a global enterprise, and they're building their brand. Yeah.
Do you want to start with fans, JMU sports fans, what their reaction? Okay. So earlier today, put it out to you guys, the listeners. What was your favorite moment from the 2022-2023 JMU Athletic year? We had a good amount of responses. A few of them not so surprising. I'm going to go through them. I want to see your reaction to them, Bennett. Some of them a little bit surprising. Few people, Garrett Lamb, CB Polk, both said the dominance over ODU. I guess that rivalry coming back is really big for some of the slightly, and I don't mean this in a rude way, slightly older alumni. I never really understood the ODU rivalry. I'm excited that it's back. I'm excited for it to grow. But the dominance over ODU to me was more of an expectation rather than like a woohoo type of thing.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It was one that was like a couple sports. Women's basketball, those were some really competitive games.
Yeah.
Men's basketball is usually fairly competitive. Baseball was like a surprising JMU upset. But when you look at like football and some of these other ones, JMU certainly has a significant advantage.
Randy NJ and a few other people I'm trying to see. Randy NJ, Alan Leffers, and Rocktown Bill all said the App State comeback was the best moment or their favorite memory of the 2022-2023 season. And that one's up there. That was an electric game.
Yeah, that's an easy one to pick, right? They had, I think somebody else put, and we'll probably get to this in a second, the Middle Tennessee game, but I feel like I didn't have the same opinion after that game. I still had doubts about like where JMU fit in the FBS landscape. And I had a lot of doubts when they went down 28-3 to App State. But when they came back and won the game, it sort of changed my thoughts on the season, my outlook on the team, and where it sat long-term, short-term, kind of significantly. So yeah, it was a massive, exciting comeback victory for them.
John G. Gert and Mike RVA both said getting ranked, which that is a fantastic memory. Seeing JMU sneak into number 25 in the AP poll, never thought I'd see that.
I didn't think it would be in year one in like early October. That was crazy. It really started to build after the App State win, and then I think that was sort of a big part of that season that goes overlooked. They played 2 teams from the West that aren't that good, but they did smoke them after an emotional win over App State. They did some really good things on the football field last year.
They did a lot of stuff. I'm excited to talk about that. Shout out Doug Friedel. His answer was watching Noah Friedel play. That is
That's a good one.
that's loyalty. Mike RVA and Roger Smith both said Lacrosse comeback against Maryland, which maybe a little prisoner of the moment type of stuff, but I mean that truly was an electric thing, a 4-goal comeback in 4 minutes to punch their spot into the Elite Eight. That is a fantastic game, and if you are a lacrosse fan, probably a great memory from the season, considering that was one of the only close-ish games of the year, really.
Yeah, I've never gotten into lacrosse the same level as I have for like softball. So I think for that it's hard for those moments to rise to the level of some other sports. But if you're a big like lacrosse fan, 4 goals down to a historically like dominant program and you find a way to win it at home, it's certainly a good one. It's got to be in the mix.
Yeah, for sure. Sid Noggs, you brought this up. Sid Noggs mentioned about the Middle Tennessee game. I kind of took it away as like belonging, and the FPS was more of that
I think
vibe, was more of the
yes.
reasoning of it, not necessarily beating Middle Tennessee.
No, I think it was the believing, yeah. Believing they
Let's
belonged.
see.
I just remember after that game, I wasn't sold yet because I didn't know like if Middle Tennessee was actually good. Like 44-7, I was like, oh, okay. Like I think Centeo and Chris Thornton have a great connection and there's some positive vibes here. But like the App State game for me was still like a way bigger test. And I think over time that one's almost even lost a little bit of luster for me over the course of the season, just because App State turned out to be like kind of average.
The Middle Tennessee game, now looking back at this point in June, the Middle Tennessee game means more in the grand scheme of the college football landscape this last year than I think the App State win did.
Hot take.
Well, like Middle Tennessee finished as a better team overall than App State did.
I was probably pretty close. Like if they played on a neutral field, I probably think App State could beat them. But it was they beat Miami, right? Middle Tennessee.
Yeah.
So
did App State beat Texas A&M?
Yeah.
Oh, but A&M sucked.
But they missed a bowl. They were 6-6, and 2 of the wins were against FCS teams. I think the Middle Tennessee, I would agree that it had more weight than I realized in the moment for sure. To beat them by 37.
Yeah. A team that would go on to like, I'm pretty sure they beat Miami by a considerable margin too.
They put up a lot of points against them too. Their offense looked awesome. Yeah. So it's a crazy one. App State sort of faded as the year went on. I kind of think some of the ones, and I guess we'll get into our own favorites in a minute, but I was impressed with some of the later games in the football season.
Okay, I'm excited to talk about that. Derek Vandervoort, he said beating Georgia State on a walk-off grand slam and ending the Georgia State tomahawk chop that I guess their savers do, their relievers do when it's a save situation. But he included the screenshot of the moment in the game, and
it's a good screenshot.
3-2 pitch, bottom of the 9th, bases loaded, and it's just jacked for a walk-off grand slam. I mean, that's the perfect way to end a game.
Baseball had their moment, so I could see if you're a diehard baseball fan picking a moment out of a season and being pleased with it. That's for sure.
I won't talk about that. And I think that's about it. Rocktown Bill was the last one. App State comeback. Yeah. So what was your favorite moment from the 2022-2023 season?
I think for me, it's a tough one. I think App State's the obvious one. Like I think App State is probably my top moment. That was just an unbelievable comeback. It meant a lot early in the season. It enabled JMU to be undefeated still going into those next 2 winnable games, which helped them get ranked. Like there was a lot of things that if they lose that game, the season, maybe it has a similar record, but the starting off 5-0 was huge. So that one's definitely up there. From a football perspective, I thought the ODU game kind of gets underhyped because ODU is not that good, but they were coming off a 3-game losing streak. If I'm not mistaken, they had never actually beaten Old Dominion in football before. The game was on the road. Centeo, we didn't know if he would actually be like closer to 100% going in, and they won by 34 in a rivalry game in state. That one to me still means a lot. We were also at the game, which adds to it, but like that's one where it won't get talked about a lot because ODU wasn't that good. But I think taking advantage of a bad ODU team and blowing them out was huge. And then obviously the Coastal win, even without McCall, was massive too. But I think the ODU one is one that gets sort of, you look at the season, you point to Coastal and how they called themselves the Kings of the East and the App State win, and people pointed to those two, and they're like, those are the two wins. I think the 34-point win over Old Dominion, having never beaten them in program history, albeit a small sample size of games, was kind of a huge deal that goes a little bit overlooked.
100%. I'm kind of in the same boat as you, as like the App State win, that comeback, the feeling of that was just something that you can't really describe. And I don't know if we'll ever understand or feel that feeling ever again. That's not to like over dramatize it, but that truly is a once in a lifetime type of moment. You don't see 28-point comebacks all that often. You especially don't see it often when it's your own team and it's the team you're cheering for and it's the underdog that pulls it off. So everything in that made that game absolutely amazing. You brought up the ODU game. I want to bring up the Georgia State game for kind of similar reasons.
Mm-hmm.
They get down big against App State. They got down big against Georgia State. Todd Centeio we don't know if he's still healthy. He came back against ODU, but it was almost an easy win, but he did win like the Oyster Shucker MVP of the game for the ODU game. I forget what it's called, but there's still some question marks about his health. He got hit a few times in that game, wasn't looking fully there. Billy Atkins comes in for a little bit. Barnett is warming up on the sidelines. And then all of a sudden, JMU comes back and wins 42-40, despite all the special team miscues, everything like that. And it also helps that we probably were at that game, and it was a really fun atmosphere.
Yeah, that certainly adds to it. I want to give a shout out to the women's basketball Sunbelt Championship. They won by 30 over Texas State, where Peyton McDaniel, Kiki Jefferson, they all got really hot. The team was 12 of 16 from three, including Peyton McDaniel, who was 7 for 7 and 10 of 11 from the floor. That was an absurd performance that will be remembered positively by me for a long time. And even the start of that Ohio State game, where they were pushing a team that they go Elite Eight, I think, pushed them to the brink for a while there. So that was one that stands out to me. And then obviously the lacrosse one, but there's a lot of ones, like volleyball won the Sun Belt title. There's a good number of options for top moments, top games. But yeah, I think App State for the emotions is certainly toward the top.
Okay, that brings us into our first kind of award we can give out, the JMU Sports News Webby Award. Best game of the 2022-2023 JMU athletic year. You go first.
Game meaning individual person, or?
No, we have a best athlete performance coming up later on in our award show. So this is just the best game that you remember watching. Like it probably is going to be App State.
I'm going App State. So, App State will be my selection. JMU App State football.
That is my selection as well. But since it's both of our selections, can we do an honorable mention? What is your second place one?
I think if I had to go second place, I would go women's basketball Sun Belt Championship.
I would go women's basketball against Troy with the game we went to.
That was a great game as well.
Where it was two heavyweight, like I forget who it was, but just goes off from three to like pull them back. And then it's just a heavyweight bout in the final few minutes of that game. And essentially was the de facto Sun Belt regular season championship. That was an epic game late in the season.
Another one that won't get mentioned, JMU ODU women's basketball. The Sun Belt tournament game was really good, but they played a regular season game that went to overtime like a couple weeks before that. That was just an incredible watch. Like both teams were clearly very talented, making a lot of plays, going back and forth. The ODU announcers were like, wow, the Monarchs are playing their best game of the year. And we're headed to overtime. Like, that was just an incredible one as well. They played a lot of really thrilling games.
So biggest heartbreak?
This is a good question.
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, you go first.
Todd Centeio on homecoming, not dressed.
That's a good one. That's a really good pick.
That's a winnable game. You're sitting there undefeated. It's a game you would have won. You can play the what if game, but sorry about the blower outside of my window. Maintenance is deciding to blow the grass off the sidewalk right as I'm talking about the biggest heartbreak of the season. But that's the moment that like you can catapult up the rankings. You can have this great moment. You can win against Marshall at home on homecoming. Everything, the nation is looking at you. And we haven't heard a lick of injury news all week. We didn't even know he was battling anything at all. And he's just not dressed. Or were they still battling to be undefeated at the time, or they had just lost to Southern? So you're looking to bounce back. And then Todd's just injured. And you're like, well, crap. And then Billy Atkins throws 15 interceptions. He throws more interceptions than he has attempts.
That's a good pick for sure. I think for me, men's basketball falling short to South Alabama and not being that competitive was kind of heartbreaking, but also have become used to it. So I'm going to go very specific to myself and say women's golf finishing 8th in the Sun Belt Championship. I thought they were at the very least going to be like top 2 or 3 in the mix. Finishing 8th ripped my heart out because they won a couple tournaments. Their last 2 tournaments before that, they had won. So they went. Here's what they did. They went second.
Tell me.
They go. So okay, we'll do the spring. First, second, first, 8th, and 8th was the Sun Belt title. So that was tough. That'll be the biggest heartbreak for me. I don't think anyone shares that level of heartbreak with me.
I would say the players and the coaches share that heartbreak.
Yeah, sorry, I meant from the fan perspective. Yeah, nobody, and I mean nobody, feels the pain of that like me.
Do you want to throw a question in here, or do you want me to keep going?
Let me fire a fun question at you, yeah. Who would be, right now, after this year, I want since this is a topic that you usually hit on, who is your list of JMU coaches who currently sit on the hot seat?
That's so rude. Honestly, right now, it's only one coach. And I want you to take a wild stab in the dark at who the one coach I have on the hot seat is right now.
Probably Coach O. You hate that guy.
Coach Eikenberry. We've talked about it so much these last few weeks as JMU was gearing up for the Sun Belt postseason. And then, I mean, they were planning to go to Omaha, according to their tweets. But, like, there was just so much hope.
You think they're just going, like they booked a trip as a team and they'll be there like as spectators?
I hope. Another sneaky one on a hot seat, also on the diamond, Coach Laporte.
That'll be an interesting one. I think next year they've got a little more expectation. So I'm interested to see what they can do because they have
fallen short and have looked underwhelming in both years since the Women's College World Series. It's tough though. Like at the end of the day, you got lucky by having 3 generational players back to back to like build this program. And then on top of that, you have players like Kate Gordon and Sarah Jubis and like all of these amazing players overall. Like you got really lucky for like a 7-8 year stretch. And what Louisiana does is just not attainable in never losing a Sun Belt series. But I will say kind of the way they have fallen short these last few years, and they didn't necessarily really answer a lot of the questions we had after 2022 coming into this season. They didn't really have an ace. Injuries happen though, so that impacted some things. So I'm not saying she's on the hot seat, but that is someone that keep an eye out on going into next season.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. They've got some good young talent, so I'm optimistic. But yes, if they come up short for sure. And the hot seat's interesting, right? The Fitzpatrick hot seat's interesting because Coach O played his way off it. He dunked on you.
He did.
Let him.
But I'm pretty sure we both called for Rowe's job. Pretty early we put him on the hot seat.
We were correct on that one.
Eikenberry, I think we are going to be correct on.
I have a hard time seeing them making a big push forward. I'd also love to see something from Bourne at the end of the season, which is over now, like confirmation of like, did he give him another 1-year extension to move his 1 to 2 for a longer window? Is he sticking with the 1? I haven't seen anything on that or even any questions about it. So interested to see if that comes up.
Yep. Most surprising program. Who surprised you the most? You went in with little to no expectations and they came away, winning a conference title, competing for a regular season. Who shocked you the most this year with a great performance?
I was surprised football won 8 games. So that's one that's up there. I think I'm going to pick women's soccer. I didn't think women's soccer was going to have a great season. They lost in double overtime to Old Dominion in the Sun Belt Conference Championship. They were one of the best teams all year in the regular season. They've had good teams in the past. But if I'm not mistaken, they had been kind of like they had
they're kind of middling.
Okay. Yeah, they've been kind of middling, honestly, since like 2016. So they hadn't been elite recently, and they'd sort of been average. maybe getting to the conference finals or things like that, but not being like a 8 games above 500 kind of team. So I was super impressed with how they played this year.
Yeah. My answer would be Lacrosse. Not in a negative way, but just the way that they were so dominant kind of surprised me. I thought they were going to be good. I thought they'd make it into the postseason. I didn't think they were Elite 8/Final Four competitors. And I did not think they were going to run through the American the way they did.
Yeah, that was really, really special.
Do you want to go into our best performances overall, coach and athlete, or do you have another weird question?
Yeah, let's do that.
Who was the coach that surprised you the most? Who receives the best coach performance award? JMU Coach of the Year, I guess you could say.
JMU Coach of the Year to me would be Shelly Clays. Like
That's
you were saying, 19-game winning streak, pretty special stuff. I think to return that program to like an elite top 5-ish team in the country caliber level this year was a pretty big deal. So I'd give it to Shelly Clays.
I like that one. I was going to say initially, Kurt Signetti.
Mm-hmm.
But that's so regular. I'm going to go Coach Jadon, women's tennis. She's no longer with the Dukes, but more so it's a lifetime achievement award for what she was able to accomplish with the Dukes. 9-1 though this last year in conference play. Really turned JMU women's tennis into one of the elite programs in the Colonial, and then going into the Sun Belt and making their impact felt right away. Overall, fantastic coach. She's going to do great things at Kentucky. So I give her the Coach of the Year award.
Okay. Fair question. Fair point.
And thank you. And best athlete performance. Who is your JMU MVP from this last year?
For their season-long performance?
Yes.
Isabella Peterson.
Oh, good one.
Superstar. Projected to come back next year. One of the best players in the country. I'll go with Peterson.
I'm going to go Todd Centeio.
Yeah.
Have to.
Soft spot for Todd.
If you didn't take Peterson, I would have taken Peterson, because that means you would have taken Centeio. Since you didn't take Centeio, I'm going to. I mean, just lit the country on fire. Was the best quarterback in the entire Sun Belt. I don't care what the postseason award said. His impact was felt when he was on the field. When he was off the field, it was extremely felt when he was off the field, because you then understood how important he was to that offense. His arm ability was top notch. His legs, amazing. Really one of the best quarterbacks. If we had more than 1 year of Todd Centeio, I think we would be talking about him in the same breath that we talk about Vadley, that we talk about Brian Shore. I forget Rodney Landers, like the guys that almost hold this weird folklore over us all. I think if Centeio was around the Dukes for more than just 1 year, he'd be in that same breath.
That's a good pick. Here's a question for you.
I'm ready.
Did we miss out in our heartbreak category on saying no waiver? No waiver was a big heartbreak.
Oh,
underrated.
That's a
choice.
good one.
Underrated
That's a
choice.
good heartbreak. That's a good heartbreak.
That would have been a good one. Okay.
Although my heartbreak wasn't that long for it. Like, my heartbreak of the Todd Centeio injury lasted the full 3.5 hours of the game, where the waiver was like, all right, what's for dinner?
That's fair. All right, I got a question. We're in the transfer portal era, the era of NIL. So I want to know your favorite transfer portal addition. So it either could have been someone who was in the portal who played for JMU last year, or a player they've since added in the portal for next year. And I would like, well, I guess we can do that one first, and then I'll do my second transfer portal question.
Okay, so my favorite, your next transfer portal question is going to be, who do you miss the most? My favorite addition, because no one's played this next year, I'm not too hype about any of the transfer portal additions so far. Men's basketball, it's cool. Football, they've added some good guys, but they haven't played, so I don't truly know. So I'm going to go, my favorite transfer portal addition was Mezzi Offram. When he was locked in, I think he was truly like the best player on the team. And when he was locked in, they looked their best. They played their best. And his impact was felt. I'm really excited about Noah Friedel next year and kind of how that offense will shape out in a full, year within the system. He had a full year off after not playing in 2021, 2022 with South Dakota State. So I'm excited about him next year, but after that last season, Mezzi Offram was my favorite transfer port. Oh, wait, why did I say that? No, that's wrong. I'll go Mezzi Offram. I forgot about Todd Centeio.
Yeah, I'll pick Todd. For the reasons you listed with your MVP vote. Offram's a good one. Yeah, Todd's an obvious pick, I guess, in some ways. What about the transfer portal biggest bummer when they left?
Can I say a duo?
Yeah.
Antoine Wells and Diamante Tucker Dorsey, like leaving bang, bang back to back like that really hurt.
That's
and
a
then
good
both
one.
going like major P5 right away.
Yeah.
Ukwu also hurts for the same exact reason, but that was a little bit, that's a year later. It just felt tough, especially Wells, because he went on to be like a fantastic SEC receiver. And seeing the connection of Centeio with Thornton, there were games that I was just like, imagine a healthy Antoine Wells catching these passes. We would be unstoppable. And then Tucker Dorsey doesn't hurt as much because Jalen Walker and Taurus Jones step in and become like elite level Sunbelt linebackers. So I love Tucker Dorsey, his sideline to sideline speed, his play, his coverage ability, all of that. He was a true veteran back there. But I think Jalen Walker and Taurus Jones were almost better. But kind of that bang bang duo leaving, that was my most like, oh, the transfer portal sucks. Honorable mention, you'll mention it, so I won't say it.
Kiki Jefferson's my top. What a bummer, man. She was so good. She was here for so long. That one stings for women's basketball. Here's my question. Here's my follow-up. If you had, let's say you had an NIL bag, right?
Yeah.
It's filled with money, and the amount of money would be enough to keep for for the rest of their college eligibility, you could have next year, it's probably Wells will probably go pro, right? After one more season.
I would assume he'll be a redshirt junior after next year. After next year, then yeah.
Okay. So let's say it's only 1 year for all of them. You've got an NIL bag that would be enough to keep them at JMU. Would you take Wells, Ukwu, or Kiki Jefferson?
That's tough. So no offense to Ukwu. He's immediately out. They're so deep on the front seven, that line. Ukwu, you're going to be missed, man. It was a bummer when you entered the portal. But for this, it's between Wells and Kiki. Antoine Smoothie, whatever they call him, Juice. Wells. But Kiki Jefferson was a certified bucket. I'm going to go Antoine Wells for the reason of what he could have done with Centeio and then what he could do with this next year with McLeod or Barnett. I think he would put up ridiculous numbers and could have gone down as like the all-time best JMU wide receiver. Kiki Jefferson, it sucks, but I don't think the team will take a massive step back without her. Like, I think if Peyton McDaniel can kind of take a step forward and fill almost that star role, we'll see a different type of offense that might be more facilitated from outside in rather than inside out. But if I had the NIL bag, I want to see a team putting up 55 a game with Antoine Wells averaging 175 a week.
Yeah, I think I'd probably end up going the same. It's a tough call, but I think I'd go the same. And man, can you imagine that offense last year if they had Wells and Thornton? You had already mentioned that, but God, like it would have been electric with the running game, the offensive line.
We would have beaten Southern.
Yeah, I think it gives them a good chance to win that game because you look at like Reggie Brown and Terrence Green all contributed at a certain level, but like, I don't think Green had a minicamp invite. I think maybe Devin Ravenel I think had a minicamp invite, but like Wells is going to get drafted.
Like within the first 4 rounds.
Yeah,
like Antoine Wells was a first team SEC player, and he's going to get better.
Yeah, it's just it would have been a freakish offense, and certainly that's a position of depth. They have a lot of depth, but they also have a lot of like questions this year at wide receiver with guys who are somewhat unproven. So if you had a Reggie Brown, Antoine Wells 1-2 punch with like Zach Horton and Taylor Thompson at tight end, would be pretty sick.
And then the backfield.
And yeah, they can run the ball. Oh, that would have been
Well,
something.
it would have been really fun. Any other questions before we head into our last one?
Yes. I
Oh
was going
God,
through my list. Going through my list. Here's a fun one, I think. We lost. Do we only lose one coach this year? Is that right?
Jadon?
Yeah, is she the only coach? I was
Yeah,
trying to think if anyone else left.
I don't think any football assistants left.
They lost one
I
assistant, but I don't think they lost any head coaches, right? For any sports.
don't think so.
I don't think so either. Here's my question. Who's the next? We talked about hot seat. Who's the next JMU head coach to get poached by like a power five or top tier? And people get offended when I say like top tier G5, but there are like a select few that probably pay better. Like if I guess UCF moved up, but if like SMU offered for a certain sport, people might be interested in that.
All
So
right.
you get what I'm saying.
You ready for this? The
Yeah.
next coach to get poached,
Yes.
Kurt Signetti. Is that a hot take?
I think it's a
I think,
fair take because if they replicate it, he'll be on a list.
but it's also the fact that like I think he would only leave for one job, maybe another one if they have a bag big enough. But it just
North
so
Dakota
happens,
State.
yeah, exactly. But it just so happens that that one job is like teetering on the edge of losing their coach within like week 4. So like
Tell us who it
it's a
is.
West Virginia and Neil Brown, like new athletic director just hired in for the Mountaineers, a head coach that's been underperforming, and Kurt Signetti has a bunch of family ties to West Virginia. That one just seems like it is prime.
That's a good question. I'm gonna look up their schedule this year and go through it, and we'll see if Neil Brown has a job at the end of the year.
Remember when we tried to do that with Louisville and then they ended up beating us by like 100?
Oh well, we don't play West Virginia. Okay, it's not an easy schedule. Penn State,
Loss.
yeah. Duquesne,
Win.
yeah. Pitt,
Win.
Texas Tech.
If you don't win against Pitt, the seat
It's gonna be
starts
tough
getting
then
hot.
after that, yeah. And then they go on kind of a tough stretch. They go Texas Tech, TCU, Houston, Oklahoma State, UCF, BYU, Oklahoma, Cincinnati, Baylor. I don't think it's going to go great, but we'll see.
500 would be a good year.
And I don't know if that keeps his. Yeah, so we'll see. Signetti's an interesting one. He talked to Dave Riggert this week, and he made some comment there, like, or Riggert asked him, he's like, is recruiting, are you getting better talent? Now they had a great Sun Belt year, you're in the FBS, all this stuff. He was like, yeah, we're competing with like the top of the G5, and there's some kids who get offered by us and teams like Boston College, West Virginia, the P5s that are really struggling. I was like, oh my God. He's already like, West Virginia sucks, so we're competing with them. I was like, no, stop. They're gonna go 9-3, Kurt. Stop.
That's amazing.
Yeah, we'll see what happens there. That'll be scary. I might pick next one to leave.
I have an answer. Do you want my second answer? What do you think?
Leave in a successful way?
Yeah,
Your
leaving
second answer? Okay,
yeah,
yeah,
getting
what's your second?
poached. Byington.
I think Byington's up there. I think Coach O is actually a sneaky, interesting one.
Really?
They go
I
to
don't
another
think so.
tournament. They go to another tournament. They've been in the WNIT a few times. He's definitely working out more. He's getting stronger. Helps during the interview process.
Helps for dunking on me.
Feats his strength. I just feel like if he does it, he's getting close. And then you also look at Kenny Brooks, what he did, which was NCAA tournament appearances, a lot of WNITs, and now he's taking teams to the Final Four. It's like, interesting.
But like Kenny Brooks was the head coach here for a long time.
He's been here longer than we think, though.
That's true. He took over in 2016.
Yeah.
That's true.
Coming up on a decade.
He's at 7 years.
Well, next year will be 8. He's coming up on it.
But I think Byington, if Byington can put together a good year again and maybe win the Sun Belt regular season, maybe even an NCAA tournament appearance, I think
probably needs
an
NCAA tournament appearance before he gets a Power 5 job, I feel like.
Probably a win or two, honestly.
Maybe, yeah.
But I just think with his track record of what he did at Georgia Southern, and then he kind of took over a very bad, one of the worst teams in Division I in JMU, and turned them into a CAA regular season champion. took down all Virginia teams in a COVID year, in a year they didn't have postseason eligibility. And then this year was in the mix for a Sun Belt regular season title in his first year in the Sun Belt and was in the semifinals of the Sun Belt Championship. If he can get over that hump, win the regular season and or get a spot, not regular season doesn't even matter, get a spot in the NCAA tournament by winning the Sun Belt, I think teams will start looking at him a little bit closer.
Yeah, there's some pretty interesting options out there. The other one that I think is probably due to happen at some point is probably
Say probably one more time.
I think it might be. I was just making sure she didn't play at because like Shelley Clays makes a lot of sense, but she played at JMU.
Yeah,
So there's like I think she just likes it here. Lauren Steinbrecher is one that like at a certain point she could probably just get a larger salary at a P5.
Yeah, that's a really good one. That's a really good one.
Yeah, probably.
Probably would be Lauren Steinbrecher.
I was just stalling. She takes them basically to the NCAA tournament or like close every year. I feel like you give her like a program that can recruit a little bit better and she maintains like that culture at that place, she's going to be able to build a really consistent team.
I do wonder though, like with some of those non-revenue sports, those Olympic sports, how much the salary is different because living in Harrisonburg is a very cheap cost of living. And I believe her husband's the head coach at Eastern Mennonite.
So there's definitely some local ties. Yeah.
But like what I'm like, Shelley Clays isn't leaving because she's played here. That you're probably not making a 100% increase in salary or even a 50% increase in salary.
I bet
like you
get
would
a pretty big bump.
Shelley Clays, she makes like 110.
No, Lauren Steinbrecher. I think Lauren Steinbrecher going to a P5. I think it's harder in lacrosse because there's probably only like 10 or 15 programs that are like clearly better at.
Yeah.
Like JMU volleyball got smoked in the NCAA tournament by BYU. Like it wasn't that competitive. And they had a really good team. So it's I don't know. I think at a certain point it's like JMU's lacrosse ceiling is a national championship. The volleyball program is not going to win a national championship anytime soon.
That's a good point.
Would be my guess.
That's a good point. I like that answer then.
And obviously we're worried about Tommy Baker. We didn't want to mention it, but we're worried about Tommy Baker. We don't want to lose him, right? He's a pretty big deal, and he's built the women's golf program into
there you go.
The verge of a dynasty, essentially.
I was going to say you might want to mention who Tommy Baker is.
Who is this guy? Tommy Baker is a legend in the making, and he's one that, yeah, I think one day he could be, coaching a guy like Jordan Spieth or something on tour.
Probably, yeah. Do you have another question? Anything else?
Let me see. I think those are my main questions. I want to make sure I got everything. Coaches, bigger job, did the hot seat, the transfer stuff, the NIL bag. What's one off the field thing? Not that you would like to see happen to JMU sports next year. So like we had talked about a lot about the need for a collective.
Yeah.
I feel like there are other things we complain about with viewing experience, whether it's broadcasts or concession lines.
I mean, we are complainers. At our heart of hearts.
Is there anything else that it's like, this would be cool if JMU figured that out, but it's not like an on-field performance thing?
Definitely the entire Bridgeforth Stadium experience.
That's probably mine. That's sort of what I was going to say and had to make it a question, a leading question for us.
I don't want to go to Bridgeforth this season. I would rather go to away games because like ODU's fan experience was so much better. And then going to those two games in back-to-back weeks was just like, oh, this is how it's supposed to be done, right? Like we go to ODU and you wait 5 seconds in line for a beer. You wait 5 seconds in line for popcorn. Then you go to JMU and you wait 45 minutes in line for hot cocoa and you can't get a beer if you want to actually watch the game.
Yeah.
And it's just an overall terrible fan experience. Honestly, I'd prefer if they just like didn't even sell concessions in the stadium. I think it would be a better overall experience.
I like that. I'd like to see Corey Spector get some more broadcast time. I don't know if I can say that, but like I'd love to see him get more involved. He's been with the Madison stuff. I thought he did a nice job at some of the Olympic sports stuff. Let's see some more. Okay. All right. What else? I had one other thing I wanted to ask. Oh, what's a bold prediction? We talked about like the highlight of the year. Maybe it was football, maybe it was lacrosse's win. What do you think will be the highlight of the year when we have our year in review podcast next year?
JMU football bowl win.
Yeah.
Because they're going to, not that there aren't going to be enough teams, right? Like, so this waivers, I know we hashed it out on a podcast a few weeks ago, but it's kind of weird. It's like you won't qualify for a bowl unless a bowl chooses you because there's not enough eligible teams. And I think there's a strong shot JMU is quote unquote bowl eligible without actually technically being bowl eligible. And like the Northrop Grumman Military Bowl held in Northern Virginia would rather have like a 7-5, I don't even know what the number would be, like a 7-5 JMU team over who was essentially the regular season Sun Belt champions over like a 6-6 Tulane team.
Yeah.
So I think that'll be the biggest one.
I like that.
What's yours?
Well, we don't know the basketball schedule yet, so I would like to pick a random basketball upset to be the highlight, but I'll say that men's basketball wins an NCAA tournament game.
I like that one. That's a good one. As a what seed? That's
a 2 seed.
Okay.
Then they get railroaded by the 10 seed in the second round, and it's a disappointing finish to it. But Terrence Edwards goes pro, top 10 pick in the NBA draft. Justin Amati, top 20. Michael Green, the third. End of the first round.
Here's a question.
Quincy Allen's projected top 1, decides to come back. He says, I'm running this shit back.
Here's a question for you.
Yeah.
How many times next season will one of us accidentally say Michael Christmas instead of Michael Green?
I don't think I will.
Oh, okay. That's just a me thing.
I'm sure I'll get some names wrong. I'm already worried about the defensive line. So
Abi Nwaba.
Let's just say the Minnesota transfer needs to have a quiet season.
Abi Nwaba Konji. Also,
yes.
I felt like he's been at JMU for like 15 years at this point. Like as a transfer, you expect him to be there like a season, and he's.
I know when they come in early. Here. They got a lot of talent, though. This team's going to win a national championship soon. Kurt Cinetti guaranteed that.
Last question.
Uh-huh.
Biggest question heading into 2024 that you want an answer to at the end of next year?
Women's golf. Can you get it back? No. Biggest question is baseball, I think, for me. Baseball, softball. I'll say Diamond Sports. I'm going to need to see something out of both those teams.
Yes, I agree. Biggest question is Eikenberry the future? That's my biggest question. Is Eikenberry the and I think at the end of next year, we'll have that answer because they're going to run it back with Eikenberry. I don't think Bourne is going to give him a 1-year extension this year to make it another weird 2 years. At the end of next year, if they are good, Eikenberry is probably going to get a multi-year contract extension. But I want to know. I want to be unequivocally that's not the right word. I want to know if Marlon Eikenberry is the future of JMU baseball.
Another big question that's flying under the radar. I feel like I heard rumblings around like 2020 that Jeff Bourne only wanted to be AD for a few more years. Maybe I made him up. I don't think I did.
Are you Googling that right now?
No, I'm not. But I feel like there were those rumblings. And it like at some point that would make sense age-wise that he would want to retire. So that's an interesting one for me is what's the future of like the high up? Because I don't think he's going to want to do it for another like decade or something.
Yeah.
He's done a great job the last couple of years, but I imagine he'll want to sort of ride off into the sunset soon. So what's the next? That might be a question for like 3 to 5 years instead of 1 year, but I'm interested to see. I'd also be interested if somebody asked him, Like, hey, what's your long-term future? He might not say, but that'd be interesting. I'd love to ask him that and then follow up with a little Marlon Eikenberry talk, and then really dive down into what he's doing to make sure Tommy Baker's a happy man. Because we got to keep him. We got to keep him. That's my big question. What's your biggest question? Outside of Marlon
I was like, I definitely already answered that question.
Outside of Marlon Eikenberry, what's your number 2 question?
My number 2 question for next year. Is Jordan McLeod a Heisman candidate?
That's a good question.
Thank you.
What's your biggest football question? Our listeners love football.
Well, the thing is like my question I know the freaking answer to. It's who's the starting quarterback, Jordan McLeod, but no one has the gall to go out there and just freaking say that Jordan McLeod is the week 1 starting quarterback. Instead, we go through this runaround that it's a 4-man race. Even let me stop. Probably my number 1 question is the secondary of football. They've added a lot of key transfers. It's another year older. You have Chauncey, as some people call him, Charles, Logan. You would expect that they all take a step forward and the secondary becomes a stronger point of emphasis from the coaching staff. So, but that's my biggest question for next year is how does the secondary hold up? Because they did lose a few games for the Dukes.
My biggest question is, can you beat a crappy UVA team? This is like they haven't played you in 40 years.
I think that's your Super Bowl. I'm convinced
definitely
the
my
way
Super
you
Bowl.
talk about this game that like honestly has no impact on the overall season. And you're like,
of course it has an impact. This is the biggest game they've played in years.
At the end of the day, if they're playing for a okay.
Well, they can't play for a Sun Belt championship.
That's a good point.
Because of our biggest heartbreak.
You're right. I forgot about our biggest heartbreak. You know what I haven't forgotten about?
Okay. I forgot about your question. Homecoming. What's that?
I said, you know what?
Yeah.
Never mind.
Todd Centeio at homecoming.
Yeah.
That was a heartbreak. This is a UVA team that's not going to be any good, respectfully. You got to find a way to win that game. They haven't played you in 40 years. It's winnable. That's a huge one for me. That's my number 1 question. I also still have some doubts that they're like, so Big Game Boomer, a lot of people are familiar with him. He tweeted
BGB.
like, what's BGB? What's JMU's record going to be? There were a lot of 10-2s from JMU fans. I'm not sold yet. So this is also my big football question outside of like receiver and UVA and defensive back. Are they actually like a top 40 team in the country or top 25-ish? Or are they more like top 65, you know? Like, are they going to go 7-5 or 10-2? Because if they go 10-2 against this schedule, Jordan McLeod comes back for another year to back up Alonzo Barnett. We're looking at a team that could be pretty special, especially with Billy Atkins in certain packages in the first year of the 12-team playoff.
So here's the thing. Let's quickly go through the schedule. We do this every now and then. Let's see how things have changed. Let's see in the spirit of Big Game Boomer, him putting out
fair.
Or she putting out what is JMU's schedule. So let's go through. Bucknell, we can say it on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, win. At UVA, noon kick on ESPNU. Win.
Yeah, I think they win.
At Troy, loss.
1, 2, 3, hurricane postponement.
I do think it's a loss.
You think they lose to Troy?
Yeah, Troy's good. They were good last year.
Troy's trash.
Okay.
Yeah, they're probably going to lose to. No, they're not going to lose to Troy.
Okay, so you're at 3-0.
Troy, I'll say they lose to Troy. We'll say that. Let's be fair.
Okay. At Utah State.
Win.
I'm going to say win.
Utah State's garbage.
I agree. Versus South Alabama at home, family weekend. They don't typically do well on family weekend. I'm going to say loss.
Oh, man. I go back and forth. I'll say they win. I'm excited, and I think we need to sort of plan this out now. And I think South Alabama might be the game when we start talking about like if the fans are loyal enough. Like that feels like it's going to have to be a topic. And I think family weekend, maybe they're like 3-1, big game against a team that was good last year. If some people leave at halftime, I think we start sending out the tweets being something about how they're disloyal, and instead of building out the stadium, they should shrink it. Let's workshop those.
Let's also talk about how they need to consistently sell out Bridgeforth for like 4 years before even thinking about expanding.
Yes.
So 3-2. I also think that Utah State win that we're chalking up is going to be a close win. Like it's not going to be an easy game just because of the travel and everything. Like
Big
so
travel.
there's a potential that after the first 2 weeks, you have a loss, a close, ugly win, and then a loss. I think we might be seeing the Twitter Spaces comeback of fire Kurt Signetti.
If they start 5-0, I'm gonna get a Kurt Signetti tattoo over my chest. Henna.
Clip it.
Henna.
Clip it. Oh.
Henna. But I'll do it.
So 3-2, then they go to Georgia, or they host Georgia Southern, a revenge game for last year, but man, Clay Helton throws it around.
Win.
I'll say win.
They got a bye week before.
Okay.
Chauncey is not going to let that stuff happen again.
Short week, Thursday, ESPN or ESPN2 at Marshall. I think that's a loss.
I think it's a win if it's on ESPN2, a loss if it's on ESPN. I think they're going to lose that game. 5 on the road at Marshall with like 5 days to prep doesn't seem great.
Yeah. And then they have a like kind of one of those weird quote unquote bye weeks because you played Thursday. Mini bye.
Comes at a perfect time for them.
Mini bye back at home against ODU. I think they win by 40.
Yeah, I think they win by 40.
Then they go on the road, normal week at Georgia State. I think that's a win. So what, we're at 3 losses and 5-3, 6-3. If I'm doing my math right, 6-3. Then they host UConn on a regular week. I think that's a loss.
No, they're going to lose to UConn. That's crazy.
UConn was good last year.
UConn, they lost their best receivers. They're going to have to play this kid from Delaware that we also offered, but I don't know if we offered him to play him or just as a little depth piece. Feels like a recruiting win for us in a way. I think we beat UConn. I think UConn's their fluff.
Okay. That's also at home. So yeah, I'll take that. I'll say win against UConn. So we're only at 3 losses versus App State at home. I think App State is trending down, and I think they may be with an interim coach at that point.
Oh, I love that take. Win.
Because their fan base has already turned on their head coach.
Yes.
Like heavily.
Yeah, they're turning.
And then they finish the season again at Coastal.
I think they're going to lose that game.
I think so too.
What is that? 4?
4 losses. 8-4.
See, 8-4, 7-5 seems kind of realistic. People are saying like 10-2 and like 12-0, and that seems a little bit insane.
I just like to go into seasons with low expectations so that all they can do is exceed them.
That's fair. I do think some of the non-JMU fans who are like, how are they going to replace Centeo, need to brush up on their homework a little bit.
I agree. I think they're McLeod, Barnett, not Atkins.
They've had great quarterback play for the last like 5 years.
But you know what's funny? You know how people kind of make fun of the Eagles GM, Howie Roseman, because he was like a second away from signing Allen Robinson, who went on to have a terrible year and instead lucked into trading for A.J. Brown. It's now come out that he was like Russell Wilson had to approve the trade, but he was trying to trade Russell Wilson and get rid of Jalen Hurts. But because Russell Wilson turned it, I kind of feel like, where was I going with this? Oh, JMU's kind of similar. They offer Gunnar Holmberg or whatever his name was. He was was so close to coming, and then he sucked.
That was terrible in the moment. And then he was he was like academically ineligible.
Yeah, and then he went on to Duke, I think, and like didn't start after week 2.
He was at Duke, and then he went to FIU and barely played.
That's it. Yeah.
I don't know why he didn't play. Weird.
Or another close one is like Gage Maloney. If COVID doesn't hit, so maybe Kurt Signetti isn't all that great. And he just kind of lucked into these major, amazing quarterbacks. Yeah, that's my hot take. That's my hot take.
Hopefully lucks into it again. That's the other. I guess maybe we're wrong. Maybe they won't have good quarterback play, in which case, like, it's going to be a battle for 6 wins against this schedule.
They need Jordan McLeod or Alonzo Barnett.
I think one of them is going to be good enough to win games, though. At least one of those two.
But you need one of them to play 75% as good as Centeo did. Yeah. And, that's hard.
It is hard.
So, we'll see. Anything else you got to add? Any other questions?
No, I don't think so.
Well, for Bennett Conlon, my name's Jack Fitzpatrick. You guys have a wonderful rest of your day. I almost said here at King's Dominion. Man, that threw me back. Have a wonderful rest of your day. See ya.
Thank you for listening to Believe. You can show support to your host by subscribing to the show and giving us a 5-star rating on your preferred platform. Check us out at Believe.com and search for BLEAV on YouTube.